the intellectual failings of this generation astonish me. Where do they get that idea? And nobody questions it. That's the thing. It's not that they're stupid. It's that they give arguments that nobody questions. I could take an example. Gavin Newsom, California, leftist, right? I would say he's a downright communist, but that's me. He says, well, oil companies are the problem. The reason we have $7 an hour gallon gas is because the oil companies are gouging people. And everyone goes, yeah, you're right. These guys are making money. Like making money is a bad thing. So what's his solution? Is his solution, let's make it in a different way? Let's change the blend. Let's do this. Because there's all kinds of rules about how you make gas in California. Different blends, different refineries, where you can ship it. It's overregulated, ridiculously. That's why it's so expensive. Why do you think California's so expensive, but Texas isn't, right? So Newsom is now proposing, well, these oil companies are making too much money. How can you make too much money? I don't believe in that. I think a person should make as much money as they want. But be that as it may, Newsom says, well, we're going to put a tax on them. Well, what is a tax? It's when government says, for whatever reason, you're making too much money or we want to cut. And so you have to give us so many cents a gallon in gas or whatever. Okay. That way it'll cut into your profits. Well, how is making the product more expensive going to make a benefit to me, the consumer? I mean, think about this. It costs, let's say it's $7 a gallon for gas in California, okay? And it costs $5. I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass here. How is making it $5.50 the cost of doing it? In other words, it costs the company $5.50 to make it now instead of $5. What am I going to do at the back end? I'm not going to charge, so I'm still charged $7. I'm going to charge $8 or more because I'm going to make profits on what? The tax. Look, I've talked about this, but it doesn't seem to sink in people's heads. The argument is not whether the oil companies are making too much profit, because that's where these Republicans go. Oh, they're not making too much profit. Well, they're not, but let's put that aside a second. The argument is always, oh, they're not making too much money. The head of the Petroleum Distillers Organization, oh, that's not true. Don't even argue that. Don't even. How is making a gallon of gas more expensive to make going to make lower prices at the pump? That's the argument. How is it going to? All it's going to do is increase the price because I'm going to charge a percentage over what it costs me to make the gas. If it costs me $1 and I make 100% profit, I charge $2. If you make the cost $1.50 instead of $1 now because of your tax, I'm going to charge $3, not $2. I'm going to get even more money. I'm going to make even more profits. Did you know who the biggest backer of regulation and tax reform is? Big companies. Do you know why? They make more money. The more expensive it costs to make something, the more profit they make from it. Within reasonable limits, because you have a free market, right? There's always going to be somebody who can make it cheaper or make it outside what? Your taxable area. And that's what will happen next. This is, why do you think Apple and all these other companies do business in China? Do you think it's because they like the Chinese? Do you think they like shipping all of their phones and parts over to China and then back and forth? And the cost? Why do you think a cell phone costs $1,000? Think it costs $100. It's made of junk. It really is. It's a steel case with a couple pieces of electronics. There's nothing in it. Why do you think it's all? Because the shipping costs and the cost of doing business. But why are they doing business in China? Because it's cheaper, right? It's cheaper to use Chinese labor. It's cheaper in regulatory behaviors by the government. So how is making it more expensive here in America going to make that a dent in that factor? California's oil companies will just start moving refineries out, which is what has happened. We haven't built a new refinery in California in 30 years. Where do you think they're going to go? They'll go someplace else. They'll go to some state that says, well, we won't tax you. You reincorporate here. Move your operation here. Build a refinery here. And that's coming as this pressure continues. Wyoming, for instance. I'll give you an example. Wyoming is a small state, population-wise, big state, land-wise. They're spending a whole bunch of money of your tax dollar, giving it to states and telling states, well, you got to put in these electric charging stations every few miles, and we're going to subsidize basically building the infrastructure, which is not what we did with the automobile. But be that as it may, that's a discussion for another day. And you know what Wyoming said? Take your money and shove it. We're not doing it. We're not putting in charging stations everywhere. We're not going to piss away the American taxpayers' money in that fashion. So what will happen next? Well, Wyoming will probably say, bring your gas vehicles here. We'll build refineries here. We'll do all these things in Wyoming that you won't do in other states, and we'll make the money here instead. Doesn't Gavin Newsom realize that? Doesn't the consumer, right, who's pumping the gas into their car, don't they realize it too? Well, you could just buy an electric car. Well, maybe I don't want to. You say, nobody factors that. Electric vehicles are less efficient in this and more polluting. And well, you can have that debate till the cows come home, whether an electric vehicle or a gasoline vehicle is better or worse for the environment, right? I can give you 100 reasons why it isn't. They can give you 100 reasons why it is. We can go back and forth all day. But nobody brings up a simple fact. What if people don't want to? What if I don't want to? What if I like the independence of a fossil fuel vehicle? What if I like a big, heavy SUV which pisses away gas at 9 miles per gallon? I got a right to do it. I don't care if you think it's bad. I don't care if it affects you. It's a free country. We do stuff in our country all the time that people don't like, more so lately. You have no right to dictate another person's behavior. Another person can drive for what they want. If I want to drive a horse down our road, nobody stops me. I got a right to drive my fossil fuel SUV. Well, that's just backward thinking. That's caveman thinking. So what? Maybe it is. I got a right to think it. And that's the argument that everyone seems to neglect. You don't have a right to tell people what to do. Government doesn't have a right to dictate the terms of private industry. Well, we do it on this industry. Yeah, that's wrong too. That's the thing. People don't step up to the plate and defend the right of freedom of speech, the right of freedom of choice, the right of freedom of doing and going and how you want to do it. I got a right. If I want to eat bacon cheeseburgers day long, morning, noon, and night, I got a right to. Well, you won't live as long. It'll give you cancer. So what? It's none of your fucking business. That's me. It was my preference and my choice. Well, it affects me. Well, you making decisions using the power of government and using the power of law affects me. So how is that different? Why are your rights somehow more important than mine? Well, we live in a democracy. No, we don't. We live in a republic. And one of the important things about living in a republic is that you live the way you want. We have representative government. We don't live in a democracy. Put that out of your mind. You don't have a right, simply because you got a majority of people, to tell the minority people what to do with their life. You don't. That's a human right. They talk about it extensively in the Federalist Papers, about the native ability of human beings to do and live as they please. You don't have a right. I don't care if it's 100 people telling one person. You don't have a right to tell people how to live. That's why we have freedom of religion. You can worship anything you want. You want to worship Satan? Go ahead. You want to worship Jesus Christ? Go ahead. You want to be Jewish? Go ahead. We can't stop you. And it doesn't matter if it's one person against 99. Was the minority right when they hung Jesus on a cross? No, they weren't right in the majority. Of course not. I could give you 100 examples in human history when the majority was wrong. In fact, I can make a better argument that the majority is usually wrong than you can make that the majority is usually right. I can make a better argument. There's a great book about it. Albert Camus wrote it. Enemy of the People. Go read it. It's another book in my library that you should read too. Banned book, of course. There's a story about a guy who's like, it got a situation like the water in Lourdes. You know, people were going and drinking the water and getting healthy. And he examined the water and there was no different than any other water. And he says, well, we got to tell the people it doesn't really work. No, you don't have a right to do that. You don't have a right to, well, the majority of the town feels that we should keep it a secret. The majority of the town is making money with this. You don't have a right to do that. Read it. Enemy of the People. I think it was a play. I'm sorry. It's not a book. It's in novel form, though. It's a great... Steve McQueen made it as a movie, I think. Brilliant movie. No, everybody forgets it. I think he got nominated. In fact, if you want to look at Enemy of the People, look it up. That's your homework for today. We got to move on. Got to talk about Delaware voting laws. We'll be right back.